At 32,000 feet, both pilots collapsed unconscious. The plane was falling. Passengers screamed in terror. Then a quiet woman from the back stood up. She spoke into the radio using a forgotten military call sign. 50 miles away, 2 fighter pilots heard her voice and froze in complete shock. That call sign was supposed to be dead. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. The Boeing 777 moved smoothly through the sky at 32,000 feet. Inside the plane, 189 passengers sat quietly. Some were reading books. Others were watching movies on small screens. A few were sleeping. In seat 24C, a woman named Sarah Mitchell stared out the window. She was 36 years old with short brown hair and tired eyes. Her hands were shaking slightly. She had not been on a plane in 4 years. Sarah used to be a pilot in the United States Air Force. She flew fighter jets. Her call sign was Shadow 7. Everyone in the military knew that name. She was one of the best pilots in the country. But 4 years ago, everything changed. During a night training mission, something went wrong with her plane's computer. The system showed her incorrect information. She made decisions based on that bad data. 3 jets crashed in the darkness. 5 pilots died that night. Sarah survived. But everyone blamed her. The military said she did not check her instruments properly. They said she was careless. They said she ignored the rules. The newspapers wrote terrible stories about her. People called her the pilot who killed her own team. Her face was on television every day. People sent her hate messages. Some even sent death threats. The military took away her pilot license. They dishonorably discharged her. She lost everything. Flying was not just her job. It was her whole life. It was who she was. And they took it all away. After losing her career, Sarah disappeared. She moved to a small town in Colorado. She changed her phone number. She avoided everyone who knew her past. She worked in a warehouse. She lived alone in a tiny apartment. She never talked about flying. She never even looked at the sky anymore. But today, she had no choice. She was flying to Washington, D.C. for a court hearing. The families of the dead pilots were suing her. Her lawyer said she had to be there. So here she was, sitting in seat 24C, trying not to panic. A flight attendant walked by with a drink cart. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked with a smile. "Just water, please," Sarah said quietly. The attendant handed her a plastic cup. As Sarah reached for it, the woman noticed scars on her forearm. They were burned scars. The kind you get when you eject from a burning aircraft. "Are you okay, ma'am?" the attendant asked gently. "I'm fine. Thank you." But Sarah was not fine. Her heart was beating fast. Every small shake of the plane made her nervous. Every sound made her think of alarms and explosions. She closed her eyes and tried to breathe slowly. Captain David Reynolds sat in the pilot's seat. He checked his instruments. Everything looked normal. The weather was clear. The flight from Denver to Washington, D.C. was going well. His co-pilot, First Officer Amanda Chen, was looking at their landing procedures. "We should be landing in about 2 hours," Amanda said. David nodded. He was 53 years old and had been flying commercial planes for 27 years. He had flown over 15,000 hours without a single problem. Today was supposed to be another easy flight. But then something went terribly wrong. David suddenly felt dizzy. The cockpit seemed to spin around him. His vision became blurry. He tried to speak, but no words came out. His hands went numb. "Captain." Amanda looked at him with worry. "Captain Reynolds." David fell forward in his seat. His head dropped onto his chest. He was unconscious. "Captain." Amanda grabbed his shoulder and shook him. No response. She immediately pressed the emergency button. "This is First Officer Chin. Captain Reynolds has lost consciousness. I need medical help in the cockpit right now." She tried to fly the plane alone, but something was wrong with her too. Her head started hurting badly. Her hands felt weak. The instruments became blurry. "I don't feel well," she whispered. Then she also fell unconscious. In the cabin, passengers heard the emergency alarm. A flight attendant rushed toward the cockpit. She opened the door and stopped in shock. Both pilots were unconscious. The plane was flying on autopilot, but autopilot could not land the plane. Autopilot could not handle emergencies. The head flight attendant grabbed the microphone. Her voice was shaking. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a medical emergency. We need to know immediately if there is anyone on board with flight experience. Anyone who knows how to fly a plane, please identify yourself now." Silence. People looked around at each other with terrified faces. A few people started crying. A man in the back shouted, "What do you mean? Where are the pilots?" "Please remain calm," the attendant said, but her own voice was full of panic. "We need someone with aviation experience. Anyone, please." In seat 24C, Sarah heard everything. Her entire body went cold. She knew what this meant. She knew what was about to happen. Without pilots, this plane would eventually run out of fuel or the autopilot would fail. Then everyone would die. She looked around the cabin. Parents holding children. Elderly couples holding hands. Young people with their whole lives ahead of them. 189 people. 189 lives. Sarah's hands gripped the armrests so tightly her knuckles turned white. Every part of her wanted to stay silent. She had promised herself she would never fly again. She had promised she would never be responsible for lives in the air again. She could not do it. She could not risk failing again. She could not risk killing more people. But then she heard a little girl behind her. "Mommy, are we going to crash?" "No, sweetheart. Everything will be okay." "But the lady said the pilots are sick. Who's going to fly the plane?" Sarah closed her eyes. She saw the faces of the 5 pilots who died 4 years ago. Lieutenant Marcus Webb. Captain Jennifer Torres. Major Ryan Okafor. Captain Lisa Yamamoto. First Lieutenant David Park. She remembered their voices on the radio that night. The confusion, the panic. The final screams before the collision. She had lived with that guilt every single day for 4 years. She had nightmares every night. She woke up screaming. She saw their faces everywhere. The families blamed her. The military blamed her. She blamed herself. But deep down, in a place she tried very hard to ignore, Sarah knew the truth. The investigation had been rushed. The flight computer data was corrupted. Nobody properly examined the evidence. They needed someone to blame. And she was the easiest target. The only survivor. "Is anyone here a pilot?" the flight attendant shouted again, her voice breaking. "Please, we are begging you. We need help." Sarah stood up. Her legs were shaking. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might explode. She walked slowly toward the front of the cabin. The flight attendant saw her. "Ma'am, please return to your seat." "I'm a pilot," Sarah said quietly. "What?" "I'm a pilot. I can fly this plane." The attendant stared at her. "Are you sure? This is not a joke. I flew combat missions for 12 years. I can fly a Boeing 777. "Oh, thank God." The attendant grabbed her arm. "Come with me quickly." They rushed to the cockpit. Sarah stepped inside and immediately looked at everything. Both pilots were unconscious but breathing. Their faces were pale. It looked like some kind of poisoning or sudden medical problem. Possibly carbon monoxide, but the cabin pressure seemed normal. She checked the instruments. Altitude, 32,000 feet. Speed, 490 knots. Autopilot engaged. Fuel, enough for about 90 minutes. Current direction, east toward Washington, D.C. Sarah's hands moved automatically across the controls. For years away from flying, but her training was still there. Muscle memory. She checked the navigation system, the communication panel, the engine indicators. Everything seemed to work except for the two unconscious pilots. She pressed the radio button. This is Shadow 7 requesting immediate emergency assistance. I am a passenger with military flight experience. Both pilots are unconscious. I have taken control of the aircraft. Requesting guidance, over. 50 miles away, two F-22 Raptor fighter jets were on a routine patrol mission. Captain Jake Morrison was flying the lead jet. His wingman was Lieutenant Sarah Vasquez. They were escorting a military transport plane. Standard security work. Morrison heard the radio transmission. The voice was female, calm, but tense. But it was the call sign that made his blood freeze. Shadow 7, he whispered. Sir. Vasquez responded. Did she just say Shadow 7? Morrison's hands tightened on the controls. Confirm that transmission. Verify the call sign. The radio crackled again. This is Shadow 7 on commercial flight United 2943, Boeing 777, cruising at 32,000 feet. Both pilots incapacitated. I am declaring an emergency. I need immediate assistance. Over. Morrison could not believe what he was hearing. Shadow 7. Everyone in military aviation knew that call sign. It was legendary. But it was also infamous. Shadow 7 was the pilot from the Nevada incident. The one who was blamed for killing 5 pilots, the one who was dishonorably discharged. Shadow 7, this is Raptor Lead, Morrison said carefully. Confirm your identity. What is your name? There was a pause. Then, Sarah Mitchell. Former Captain, United States Air Force. I know I am not authorized to use military call signs, but right now there are 189 people on this plane who need help. Can you assist or not? Morrison made a quick decision. Shadow 7, we are en route to your position. Stand by for guidance. Raptor 2, form up on me. We are escorting United 2943. Copy that, Raptor Lead, Vasquez responded. The two F-22s changed course and flew faster toward the commercial airliner. Within 3 minutes, they were on both sides of the Boeing 777. Through his canopy, Morrison could see the massive aircraft. It looked stable, but he knew the situation inside was desperate. Shadow 7, this is Raptor Lead. We have visual contact. You are flying straight and level. Good job. What is your status? Sarah's voice came through. Both pilots are unconscious. Cause unknown. Possibly carbon monoxide or some kind of medical event. I have autopilot engaged. Fuel is good for 90 minutes. I need instructions for emergency landing procedures. I have not flown a commercial aircraft before. My experience is with F-16s and training aircraft. Morrison felt a chill. An F-16 fighter jet was completely different from a Boeing 777. Different controls, different procedures, different everything. But at least she knew how to fly. That was better than nothing. Understood, Shadow 7. Stand by. We are contacting ground control. Morrison switched to the command frequency. Ground control, this is Raptor Lead. We have an emergency situation. Commercial Flight United 2943 has both pilots incapacitated. A passenger with military flight experience has taken control. She is former Air Force, call sign Shadow 7. We need emergency landing clearance and full support. The response was immediate. Raptor lead, this is ground control. Did you say Shadow 7? As in Sarah Mitchell from the Nevada incident? Affirmative. Copy that. Stand by. 30 seconds later, a different voice came through. Older, calm, authoritative. Shadow 7, this is Colonel Richard Hayes, Air Traffic Command. We are going to help you land this aircraft safely. First, I need you to tell me your current flight experience level. Sarah took a breath. I flew F-16s for 8 years. I have approximately 2,000 flight hours in military aircraft. I completed advanced training in emergency procedures and combat situations. But I have not flown in 4 years, and I have never landed a commercial aircraft this size. Understood. But you understand basic aviation principles. That is what matters. We are going to guide you through this step by step. Do you understand the control layout in front of you? Sarah scanned the cockpit. Yes, sir. I have the yoke, throttle, rudder pedals, and instrument panel. The autopilot is engaged. Navigation shows we are heading east at 32,000 feet. Good. Keep the autopilot engaged for now. We need to find you an emergency landing site. Your current fuel allows for approximately 90 minutes of flight time. Is that correct? Affirmative. We are going to route you to Edwards Air Force Base in California. It has the longest runway in the country and full emergency response capabilities. Your current position is over western Colorado. We will guide you southwest. Estimated flight time to Edwards is 45 minutes. Can you maintain current altitude and speed? Yes, sir. I can do that. Excellent. Raptor lead will escort you. Follow his guidance. We are also sending up additional support aircraft. You are not alone, Shadow 7. We are going to bring you home. Sarah's throat tightened. Bring you home. Those words hit her harder than she expected. She had not felt like she had a home in 4 years. She had been running, hiding, living in shame. Thank you, sir, she said quietly. Morrison's voice came through. Shadow 7, this is Raptor lead. We are going to make a turn to heading 240. That will take us toward Edwards. When you are ready, I need you to disengage the autopilot and manually turn the aircraft. Do you understand? Sarah's hands hovered over the controls. This was it. The moment when she took full control, the moment when 189 lives depended entirely on her. The same way 5 lives had depended on her 4 years ago. Shadow 7, do you copy? Morrison asked. I copy, Sarah said. Disengaging autopilot now. She pressed the button. The autopilot disengaged. The yoke became active in her hands. She could feel the weight of the aircraft, the resistance of the air, the power of the engines. For the first time in 4 years, she was flying again. Begin your turn now, Morrison instructed. Gentle turn to the left, heading 240. Sarah turned the yoke slowly. The massive aircraft responded smoothly. The nose swung left. The horizon tilted slightly. She adjusted the rudder to keep the turn smooth. Years of training came back to her like second nature. Good turn, Shadow 7, Morrison said. You are doing great. Roll out on heading 240. Sarah straightened the yoke. The plane leveled out. She was flying southwest now. Toward Edwards Air Force Base, toward safety. In the cabin behind her, passengers had no idea what was happening. They saw the fighter jets outside the windows. Some people took pictures. Others prayed. A few people were crying. But most were just silent, waiting, hoping. A flight attendant came to the cockpit door. "Is everything okay?" Sarah did not take her eyes off the instruments. "We are under military escort. We are heading to an emergency landing site. Tell the passengers to remain calm. We are going to be fine." The attendant nodded and went back to the cabin. But her hands were shaking. She did not know if they were really going to be fine. She had seen the unconscious pilots. She had seen the scared look in this passenger's eyes before she took control. But at least someone was flying the plane. At least they had a chance. Colonel Hayes came back on the radio. "Shadow 7, we have a medical team analyzing the situation with your pilots. Based on their symptoms, it appears to be sudden hypoxia, possibly from a pressurization issue. However, cabin pressure appears normal now. They should regain consciousness within 20 to 30 minutes. Until then, you remain in control." "Understood," Sarah said. "I also need to inform you of something," Hayes continued. His tone changed slightly. "I was one of the investigating officers in the Nevada incident 4 years ago." Sarah's breath caught. Her hands tightened on the yoke. "I know what you are thinking," Hayes said. "But I want you to know that investigation was flawed. I tried to get it reopened. There were inconsistencies in the data. The flight computer logs showed problems that were never properly examined. But by the time I compiled my findings, you had already been discharged and disappeared. I have been trying to reach you for 3 years." Sarah could not speak. Her mind was spinning. "The truth is, Sarah," Hayes said gently, "that accident was not your fault. The equipment failed. You made decisions based on false data. No pilot could have prevented that collision. I have the evidence. I have the reports. And when you land safely today, I am going to make sure your name is cleared. You deserve that. You always deserved that." Tears filled Sarah's eyes. For years of guilt. For years of shame. For years of nightmares and pain. For years of carrying blame that was not hers to carry. For years of thinking she was a killer. "Shadow 7, do you copy?" Hayes asked. Sarah wiped her eyes. "I copy, sir." "Thank you. You are about to save 189 people, Sarah. That is who you really are. That is the pilot I remember. Now let's bring this plane home." Morrison's voice came through. "Shadow 7, we are 30 minutes from Edwards. Ground control is clearing the runway now. Fire crews and medical teams are standing by. How are you holding up?" "I am okay," Sarah said. And for the first time in 4 years, she actually meant it. The next 30 minutes passed in intense focus. Sarah monitored every instrument. She made small adjustments to direction and altitude. She communicated constantly with Morrison and Hayes. The F-22 stayed perfectly positioned on her wings, protecting her, guiding her. Inside the cockpit, Captain Reynolds began to stir. His eyes opened slowly. He looked around, confused. "What? What happened?" "Captain, you lost consciousness," Sarah said calmly. "I am a passenger with flight experience. I have been flying the aircraft. We are on approach to Edwards Air Force Base for an emergency landing." Reynolds tried to sit up. "Who are you?" "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I am a former Air Force pilot." He stared at her. Then recognition hit his face. "Shadow 7. You are Shadow 7. "Yes." Reynolds looked at the instruments. The plane was stable. The F-22s were visible outside. Everything was under control. He slumped back in his seat. "Thank God you were on this flight. How do you feel?" "Dizzy, weak, but I am conscious." He looked at the co-pilot. Amanda Chen was also starting to wake up. What happened to us? Possible hypoxia, Sarah said. Medical teams will examine you after we land. Can you assist me with landing procedures? Reynolds nodded slowly. Yes, I can guide you. But your hands stay on the controls. You are doing a great job. Sarah felt a wave of relief. Having an experienced commercial pilot to guide her through the landing would make everything easier. Shadow 7, this is ground control, Hayes said. You are 20 miles from Edwards. Begin your descent to 15,000 feet. Reduce speed to 250 knots. Copy that. Beginning descent. Sarah pulled back slightly on the throttle. The engines quieted. She pushed the yoke forward gently. The nose dipped. The altimeter began to decrease. Reynolds coached her through each step. Good. Steady descent. Watch your rate. You want about 1,000 feet per minute. Understood. The landscape below began to take shape. Desert, mountains, then the flat area of Edwards Air Force Base appeared on the horizon. Sarah could see the massive runway, longer than any commercial airport. Emergency vehicles lined both sides, red lights flashing. Shadow 7, you are cleared to land on runway 04, Hayes said. Wind is calm, visibility is excellent. You have 10 miles to touchdown. Lower your landing gear now. Sarah looked at Reynolds. He pointed to the gear lever. She pulled it down. A mechanical rumble shook the aircraft as the landing gear extended and locked into place. 3 green lights appeared on the panel. Gear down and locked. Landing gear confirmed, Sarah reported. Good. Now extend your flaps to landing position, Reynolds instructed. Sarah moved the flap lever. The wings changed shape as the flaps extended, increasing lift and drag. The plane slowed further. Flap set for landing, Sarah confirmed. You are doing perfect, Morrison said from his F-22. 5 miles to touchdown. You have got this, Shadow 7. Sarah lined up the runway in her windscreen. It looked like a long gray stripe in the desert. Fire trucks, ambulances, hundreds of people watching, all depending on her. But this time, she was not alone. She had support. She had guidance. She had people who believed in her. 2 miles, Hayes said. Reduce speed to 180 knots. Begin your final approach. Sarah pulled back more on the throttle. The plane descended steadily. The runway grew larger. 1 mile, half a mile. Looking good, Reynolds said beside her. Ease back on the yoke as you touch down. Let the rear wheels hit first. Sarah focused completely. Her hands were steady. Her mind was clear. Everything she had ever learned, every hour of training, every mission she had ever flown, all of it came together in this one moment. The runway rushed up to meet her. 100 feet, 50 feet, 20 feet. She pulled back gently on the yoke. The nose lifted slightly. The rear wheels touched the concrete with barely a bump. Perfect landing. The nose gear settled down. Sarah engaged the brakes and reverse thrust. The plane slowed quickly, smoothly, safely. Shadow 7, you are down, Hayes said. His voice was filled with emotion. Welcome home. The plane rolled to a stop on the runway. Emergency vehicles surrounded it immediately. Medical teams rushed aboard to help the pilots and check the passengers. Everyone was safe. Everyone was alive. Sarah sat in the pilot's seat, her hands still on the yoke, her body shaking with released tension. She had done it. She had saved them. She had not failed. Reynolds put his hand on her shoulder. You are a hero. You just saved all of our lives. Sarah could not speak. Tears rolled down her face. The cockpit door opened. Colonel Hayes stepped inside. He was a tall man in his 60s with gray hair and kind eyes. He looked at Sarah with deep respect. "Captain Mitchell," he said formally. "On behalf of the United States Air Force and everyone on this aircraft, thank you." Sarah stood up on shaking legs. She tried to salute, but Hayes stopped her. Instead, he pulled her into a brief, respectful hug. "You never stopped being a pilot," he said quietly. "And you never stopped being a hero. Welcome home, Shadow 7. 1 week later, Sarah stood in a conference room at the Pentagon. The families of the 5 pilots who died in the Nevada incident were there. So were military officials, investigators, and journalists. Colonel Hayes presented his findings. The flight computer had malfunctioned. The navigation data was corrupted. The collision avoidance system failed. Sarah had made every correct decision based on the information she had. The accident was not pilot error. It was equipment failure. The military had rushed the investigation. They had needed someone to blame. And they had destroyed an innocent pilot's career. The official report was released to the public. Sarah Mitchell was fully cleared of all charges. Her discharge was overturned. Her rank was restored. Her record was cleaned. The families of the pilots apologized. They had blamed her because they needed someone to blame. But she was not responsible. They understood that now. The media that had destroyed her reputation now tried to rebuild it. But Sarah did not care about headlines anymore. She cared about truth. And the truth had finally come out. The Air Force offered to bring her back. Full rank, full honors. She could return to active duty. She could fly again. Sarah thought about it for a long time. Then she made her decision. She accepted, but not to fly combat missions. She requested a position as a flight instructor. She wanted to teach the next generation of pilots. She wanted to share what she had learned. She wanted to honor the memory of the 5 pilots who died by making sure future pilots were better trained, better prepared, better equipped. Her request was approved. 6 months later, Sarah stood on the runway at Edwards Air Force Base. She wore her flight suit again. The patch on her shoulder read, "Instructor, Shadow 7. A group of young cadets stood in front of her. Eager faces. Bright eyes, ready to learn. "Good morning, cadets," Sarah said. "My name is Captain Sarah Mitchell. Call sign Shadow 7. I am going to teach you how to fly. But more importantly, I am going to teach you how to handle failure, how to face fear, how to make decisions under pressure, and how to never give up even when the whole world tells you that you are finished." The cadets listened carefully. "Flying is not just about skill," Sarah continued. "It is about courage. It is about honor. It is about standing up when everything tells you to stay down. For years ago, I made a mistake. At least everyone said it was a mistake. I believed them. I let them take away who I was. But then one day, at 32,000 feet, I got a second chance. And I took it." She looked at each cadet. "You will all face moments when you doubt yourself. When you fail, when people judge you. In those moments, remember this, you are not defined by your worst day. You are defined by what you do next. Now let's get to work." The cadets followed her toward the flight line. Above them, F-22s flew across the sky. And for the first time in 4 years, Sarah looked up at those planes and smiled. She was home. 3 months into her new role as instructor, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Captain Jake Morrison, the F-22 pilot who had escorted her that day, requested permission to meet with her. They met in a quiet office at the base. Morrison stood at attention and saluted. Sarah returned the salute with respect. "At ease, Captain," she said. "What can I do for you?" Morrison relaxed slightly, but his expression remained serious. "Ma'am, I wanted to apologize. When I first heard your call sign that day, I hesitated. For those few seconds, I doubted whether we should help you. I knew your history. I knew what people said about you. And I am ashamed that I let those judgments affect my thinking even for a moment. Sarah looked at him carefully. But you did help. You guided me through that landing. You stayed with me the entire time. Yes, but I should have trusted you immediately. You are a pilot. You were in trouble. That should have been enough. Morrison's voice was filled with genuine regret. I let rumors and media stories influence my judgment. That was wrong. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled gently. Captain Morrison, you made the right choice when it mattered. That is what defines us. Not our first thought, but our final action. You helped save 189 people that day. I will always be grateful for that. Morrison nodded slowly. Thank you, ma'am. There is one more thing. My younger sister wants to become a pilot. She is applying to the Air Force Academy next year. She watched the news coverage of your story. She read about everything you went through and how you came back. You inspired her. She asked me to tell you that you are her hero. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. What is her name? Emily Morrison. She is 17. Brilliant kid, top of her class. When she gets accepted to the academy, tell her to look me up. I would be honored to mentor her. Morrison smiled. I will, ma'am. Thank you. After he left, Sarah sat alone in the office for a while. She thought about how far she had come. From the darkness of blame and shame to this moment of peace and purpose. She thought about the 5 pilots who died in Nevada. She thought about the 189 people she saved. She thought about all the students she would teach in the years to come. Her story was not just about redemption. It was about resilience. It was about the power of truth. It was about never giving up even when the whole world turns against you. Sarah stood up and walked to the window. Outside, cadets were running drills on the runway. Above them, the sky was endless and blue. The same sky that had once been her prison was now her purpose. She placed her hand on the window and whispered the names she would never forget. Marcus. Jennifer. Ryan. Lisa. David. This is for you. Everything I do from now on is for you. Then she turned and walked back toward the flight line where her students were waiting. There were planes to fly. Lessons to teach, lives to shape. Shadow 7 was finally home. And she was never leaving again. 2 years after the emergency landing, Sarah Mitchell stood before a packed auditorium at the Air Force Academy. She had been invited to speak at the graduation ceremony. In the front row sat Emily Morrison, Captain Morrison's sister. She was graduating top of her class. She would be going to flight training school next month. Sarah had mentored her throughout her 4 years at the academy. Sarah looked out at the sea of young faces. Future pilots, future heroes, future leaders. When I was your age, Sarah began, I thought being a hero meant never making mistakes. I thought it meant being perfect. Being fearless, being invincible. She paused. I was wrong. Being a hero does not mean you never fall. It means you get back up. It does not mean you are never afraid. It means you act despite your fear. It does not mean you never fail. It means you learn from your failures and keep moving forward. The auditorium was silent. Some of you will face moments that test everything you believe about yourself. Moments when the world turns against you. Moments when you question whether you have the strength to continue. In those moments, remember this, the sky does not care about your past. It does not care about your mistakes. It only cares about who you are right now, in this moment, and what you choose to do next. Sarah smiled. For years ago, I thought I had lost the sky forever. But the truth is, the sky never left me. I left it. And when I finally found the courage to return, it welcomed me back. Because the sky belongs to anyone brave enough to reach for it. She looked directly at Emily Morrison. So reach for it. Reach for it with everything you have. And never, ever let anyone tell you that you do not belong up there. The auditorium erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Emily approached Sarah with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "For everything, for being my mentor. For showing me what real strength looks like." Sarah hugged her. "You did this yourself, Emily. I just pointed you in the right direction. Now go out there and make your own mark on the sky." Emily saluted. Sarah returned the salute. Then Emily walked away, toward her future, toward her dreams. Sarah watched her go and felt a sense of peace she had not known was possible. She had been given a second chance. And she had used it to give others their first chance. That night, Sarah returned to her small house near the base. She made a cup of tea and sat on her porch, looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there, 5 pilots were watching. Marcus. Jennifer. Ryan. Lisa. David. "I hope I made you proud," she whispered to the night sky. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying her words up into the darkness. And somewhere in that darkness, she felt an answer. A sense of forgiveness, a sense of peace. She had carried their memory for 4 years. She had honored them with her return to the sky. She had honored them with every student she taught, every life she touched, every moment she chose courage over fear. She was Shadow 7. She was home. And the sky was waiting for tomorrow's flight.